So the Midnight expansion is going to be all about elves, right? It's supposed to be, the Elven expansion, as they call it, the gathering of all the elves in Silvermoon. Maybe some elf fornication going on. Most likely that'll happen. But in all seriousness, we're getting back into the Elven lore, and Elven lore has oftentimes been core to a lot of World of Warcraft stuff. I mean, you talk about Wrath of the Lich King, the Dead Scar, the Fall of Silvermoon. That was a massive event. You're talking about Legion, right? And Burning Crusade with Illidan. He was an elf, obviously, so he played a major role in a lot of things in the game. So the elf lore has oftentimes been one of the most important pieces of lore in the game. Now we're revisiting it all. Warcraft's elves are an absolute nightmare. It's all their fault. Let's dive into some Elven lore here with Bellular as we prepare ourselves for midnight.
You know, there's one thing about Warcraft's elves. They're an absolute state, and they keep on utterly wrecking the place. So today we're going to have fun. We're going to cover some deep lore, the history of the Blood Elves, why the Sunwell is so important, and how it hooks up with Xal'atath's big end goal. That's all big, juicy, fun story, but the thing I want to tell you the most is this. Blood Elves are basically the villains of an ancient story, and they're now kind of facing the consequences of their actions. You see, they invited Sargeras to Azeroth, basically space Satan. They then brought the whole world to ruin.
Fuck it, Azshara, man. She's hot, but yeah, she really fucked us over. She did invite the Legion over and everything else, and then dabbled with the old gods as well. I mean, yeah, hentai and tentacles and all, of course she would be interested in N'Zoth. But yeah, she fucked up a lot of shit. She really did. And I think we're going to see her again in Midnight, actually. I do feel like we're going to get more Azshara lore. She's going to come back. Maybe a team up. Who knows? I mean, she's kind of crazy, but hey, maybe we'll need her help.
Then they maintained their addiction to magic through the Sunwell, no matter how many villains tried to use the Sunwell as a world-ending device, which, should have clued them into it maybe being a little bit of a bad idea. I mean, seriously, how many times do we need to defend the damn Sunwell? Quite a few, and Midnight will probably add one or two more. And it all begs a question, does there come a point in time where we just have to admit that having elf wells everywhere is just a really bad idea? And
I guess the way you could think about like the elf wells and all these power wells that exist, they're like nuclear bombs. Like any second, they could go off and some crazy person could show up and make them explode. And maybe that's what's happening at the beginning of Midnight. Maybe she's trying to blow the shit up. But yeah, letting these elves have all these damn nuclear sites all over World of Warcraft, or all over Azeroth, I should say. Yeah, it's caused some problems.
Are kind of wrecking the place. Well, you can decide for yourself after you're hearing the evidence. To start then, let's see just how many disasters the highborn and their descendants have caused. I've also got a bit of a challenge for you. Give me 30 minutes, and with today's sponsor, you'll finally have the website that you've been meaning to build.
Yeah, remember when George W. Bush said Iraq had wells of mass destruction? Turns out they didn't.
So much as a platform.
I remember that.
Design Intelligence is their mix of tools that help you access their 20 years of design experience easily. Starts with Blueprint AI, and that starts with a few questions.
What is this ad
Once
for?
you answer those, you'll use their interactive design system to build
Squarespace?
your own template, just the way that you like it, but with them keeping you right, with designer-picked fonts and color palettes, all matched to your aesthetic. And then
Squarespace got a sponsor me, man. I need a sponsorship.
Your content, it's all seamlessly
Where's mine?
integrated. And if you've just been overwhelmed in the past, or you just want to start quickly with all of your bases covered, this set of features is literally made for you. And their core platform is always growing as well. They've got native video support, so you can have a gorgeous player, you can have video gallery layouts that are all interoperable with their e-commerce tools. It's real impressive, and when I needed sites, Squarespace was my first protocol because they make it easy. So, to get started today, squarespace.com/BellularGaming.
There you
Check
go.
out Design Intelligence,
Bellular
and when
Gaming.
you're ready to send your site live, use code BellularGaming for 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain.
Do it. Okay, yeah, as someone made a comment here, J-Mal talking about Azshara doing bad things, but he also said Kael'thas fucked up a lot of shit. He did. Yeah, Kael'thas did mess up a lot of shit. Now, whose intentions were more pure? I think Kael'thas, was trying to save his people at the end of the day. They were a dying people, losing their magic. They were basically withering away, kind of like the Wither did, right? So there were issues, and he was trying to solve them, and yes, did he turn to evil powers to do so? Yeah, he kind of did. That's an old trope in WoW. But then Kael'thas, we've killed him multiple times now, and then we finally saw him again in Shadowlands. I don't know if we'll get more Kael'thas lore in Midnight. I mean, maybe he'll be mentioned, but I feel like that whole story has been done multiple times now in WoW.
Well, you can decide for yourself after you're hearing the evidence. To start then, let's see just how many disasters the highborn and their descendants have caused. I've also got a bit of a challenge for you. Give me 30 minutes, and with today's sponsor, you'll finally have the website that you've been meaning to build.
Squarespace.com/BellularGaming.
Azeroth, then. She's super powerful. The last 4 expansions have basically shown us that she's pretty much the center of creation. And what she is this thing. We call it a world soul. And she's got a planet around her, and that planet is filled with power that comes from her. And only recently did we experience that power as something called the Radiant Song. But enough War Within lore, we're going way back in time for this part of the video. Before that, when we thought of Azeroth, we thought of Arcane. That's because Arcane is the type of magic most associated with the Titans, and the Titans are trying to turn Azeroth into one of them. Unimaginable amounts of power came out of her. I mean, just look at this fan art of the ley lines all across Azeroth. Those ley lines are her energy bleeding through into the surface and around it.
It's really cool fan art. Yeah, it's all these ley lines and how they're connected everywhere.
They'll be important soon, but that piece of fan art is kind of missing something. Something right there in the middle, which is called the Maelstrom. And the Maelstrom is evidence that these magical elf wells are really quite dangerous. Yeah. So here's the story of it. Whenever the Titans fought the old gods for dominance over Azeroth, way back in the day, Aman'Thul ripped Y'Shaarj from the planet. The problem is, doing that left a huge wound, and Azeroth was kind of bleeding out. It got so bad she was essentially close to death, so the Titans refashioned this wound into a great, pristine lake. So Azeroth's energy flooded into the waters of that lake, and that is what we call the Well of Eternity. Now think about everything I said of how powerful...
Yeah, Aman'Thul fucked up when he did what he did, and leaving the old god shit still on the planet. Obviously, he ripped him out, but there were still pieces of him left behind. Probably one of those pieces was a dick, you know, it makes sense. And then the whole thing about how it left a wound of Azeroth that had been seeping power, that's been a common theme now throughout World of Warcraft. I mean, obviously, with the Sword of Sargeras and the planet, we got tons of woundage leaking out. I mean, Azeroth's been bleeding for like freaking 20 years now. Literally, just leakage everywhere. And every time she leaks, we win, I guess. We get more powerful because her blood contains power and everything else. So, will she continue to leak in Midnight? I guess we'll see. I don't know where I'm going with that. But yeah, it's been a common theme, I guess, that the lifeblood of Azeroth gives power, and it's been constantly coming out to the surface over these last 2 decades.
Azeroth is, right? And this is an open wound of power directly from Azeroth's world soul. And that brings me to the beginning of our story with the Elves. You see, a bunch of dark trolls who lived in and around the Well of Eternity slowly started to change, and they actually evolved into what we call Night Elves. But where our story begins is a little later.
But you see, now this story has changed a little bit with the Haranir, because Blizzard recently released a statement saying that the trolls and the Elves come from the Haranir. Which didn't make sense to me because the Haranir honestly look like the link between the trolls and the elves, but they're saying no, they are the originator of the trolls and the elves, which is so confusing to me. Did they degenerate into the trolls? The trolls seem like, I don't know, like a more primitive version of them, but I guess that feeling's not true because that was their direct statement, was the Haranir are the originals and then the trolls and the elves came from them. So I don't know how the trolls came about. How the elves came about totally makes sense. It's from the well, right? The well's power. That's what he's talking about right now. They dabbled in the magic of the well, and then it eventually evolved into what the elves are today.
Change. And they actually evolved into what we call Night Elves.
Right.
But where our story begins is a little later, with an elf of their highborn caste who is called Dathramar Sunstrider. Now he is the first high elf. And, well, the high elves really do have a history of fucking everything up. Let's set up his crime.
That's one way to put it.
Dathramar and his descendants, now known as the Blood Elves, were up to some real shady stuff, and it's kind of coming round to bite them in Midnight. But if you only know Blood Elves from their recent depictions in-game, well, you've got no idea how far back this story goes.
Right.
So let's return to the ancient days around...
The Blood Elves of today's World of Warcraft are very tame compared to with the Blood Elves that we've dealt with in the past. The Blood Elves of the past were completely reckless. They didn't give a shit about the fallout of anything they were dabbling in or what they were doing. They just would do it in the pursuit of power. Their only goal was the pursuit of power, the pursuit of magic. It was crack cocaine for them, and they just needed more and more, and they would pursue it no matter what the fallout would be on the other side. Today's Blood Elves are more calculated. And like they're more practical. They make decisions that seem, and whether that's under Lorthamar's leadership, like Lorthamar's just a good leader, and that's why they seem more practical, or whether it's just that they've grown over the years to, from their mistakes, they've learned, yeah, maybe an all-out pursuit of power isn't the best way to do things.
The ancient days around the Well of Eternity, the Night Elves built a nation around the well named Elundiris. Now, they were a nocturnal society. That made Dathramar's Sunstrider's family strange. They had their sun-based name in this moon-based society. So, you know what? It was time for a little bit of balance. Some followed Cenarius, and they worshipped the wilds. That's the Night Elves that kind of resemble the Night Elves you know in-game. Whilst others, like the Sunstrider family, well, they delved into the mysteries of the well. Now, this was just two groups of elves pursuing magic they found interesting. For a happier elf society, all would be fine. But it wasn't fine, because that all changed when Azshara ascended to the throne. She was one of this highborn caste, and she was born with golden eyes that told she had a great destiny. She goes on to become one of their greatest sorcerers.
Yeah, there's a common theme with elves. Their eye color means a lot. That's really a common theme in World of Warcraft in general. That eye color oftentimes indicates where you got your power from or what you're dabbling in at the time. But yeah, the golden eyes of Azshara were a big indication of what she was going to do. Another guy that had golden eyes, another elf, yeah, Illidan. Now, he ripped him out. He stabbed him out of his own head. But yeah, supposedly that his eyes were a big tell of his future and his future importance, right? There was legend around him that he was going to be an important character, and he was. That legend did come true. His golden eyes didn't live to see it, though.
And she expands Elundiris into a continent-spanning empire. And at the heart of that empire was Zin Ashari. It was their big city. And at its center was Ashara's palace. I
always thought it'd be really cool to go back and see this city in-game. Zenajari just looks like such a cool-looking city, and it honestly looks, from the depictions that we saw from this, it looks a little bit different than any other Elven cities that we've seen. A little bit more squared off in some spots here. Obviously, it was on the coastline here. It almost looks like a Greek city, like a Santorini or something inspired. But their architecture is so different from anything else we've seen in Elven cities in the game. Now, do we need more Elven cities? I don't know. People can argue about that in the forums and stuff. But I do think it'd be really cool to, time walk or go back and see what this city actually looked like in its glory days.
Visited by the time you visited it, many, many years had passed and it was kind of under the ocean. And now you're going to learn why. So Zin Ashari is this immense structure that divided Elven society into those who lived in the palace, the highborn, and those who didn't, the Kaldorei. Basically, the people who would go on to be the Night Elves that you meet in the game.
Right.
Now, Dathramar was part of the highborn, and he was part of her elite circle. He was very close to the Queen. But he was also one of the first to realize that she really was going off the deep end.
Yeah.
You see, Azshara made contact with Sir Garrus, and he promised to transform Azeroth into a paradise, if only the highborn would allow him to visit, using the Well of Eternity as a portal. This would not end well.
Damn it, Azshara.
Demons then came to the palace. These demons, these Eridar sorcerers, started teaching people dark arts. The Nathrazim were weaving their way into the depths of highborn society. And looking around, Dathramar felt that things were going horribly wrong. He just had no idea how badly wrong they were about to go.
Right. I wonder if this is where, original warlocks came from. Right, the demons teaching dark magic and shit. Obviously, they're teaching warlock-esque magic. I wonder if that's where their origin. I don't know the warlock origination story or who the first warlock ever was, but being taught magic by demons, yeah, probably did lead to the warlock class.
The highborn's madness peaked 10,000 years ago, and two things happened in quick succession. Demons left the palace to kill the Kaldorei, trigger for the Kaldorei.
Was Gul'dan the original warlock? Was he? I don't think so. I think warlock magic had been a thing prior to, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he was the first warlock to ever exist. I mean, he was a lot of the orcs around Gul'dan at the time did not know where his magic was coming from, and they had never seen anything like it before. We know that. That's part of the lore. And Gul'dan was like an outcast. He was weak, fragile. He wasn't as strong as the other orcs. And then all of a sudden he had all this magic power. Nobody knew where it came from. I thought it was Gul'dan also, but not sure. He was? Okay, yeah, confirmed. Okay, yeah, you know what? It does make sense that he was, actually. It does make sense that he was the first warlock. Because, again, his powers were a surprise to a lot of... Nobody knew what to make of his powers. right? And then later on, it was revealed where he was getting it from, and it's corruption and all that shit. So yeah, Gul'dan first warlock, I guess. Yeah, you could say it was. So then I wonder what all these elves were learning from the Legion, right? Because they were interacting with them. Although maybe Gul'dan's timeline is before this, because this is how warlock shit came to Azeroth. But Gul'dan was on Draenor, and maybe all that was happening prior to this. So maybe the elves were the first here, but Gul'dan was the first in Draenor.
Resistance, and in the face of that resistance, Azshara arrested one of their leaders.
Yeah, he was a failed Shami, yeah.
Called Tyrande. You may have met her in WoW. Now, Dathomir, looking around, finally admitted to himself that the Queen had actually just gone mad. So he secretly meets with Tyrande. He breaks her out of the palace, and along with many other highborn, well, he left to join the resistance. So he's one of the good uns. Now, many distrusted the Highborn because they were very close to all of that sus, demon, evil bullshit. But these Highborn were actually key to the final conflict at the Well of Eternity, where basically the good guys win. As the ritual to summon Sargeras began, Dathomir wielded Philomilorn, which you may have actually picked up in Legion, because it's...
That was the fire mage artifact weapon. I had it.
The mage artifact weapon.
Yep.
Well, he wielded that like an elf possessed, and when the fighting was done, he basically stood completely painted in demon blood. So, good for him, but ultimately things wouldn't really go
Pretty
great.
badass.
And what the Highborn had done here is they proved their place in a post-Azshara world. They were instrumental to toppling her. But there was one Highborn who just kept breaking the rules. His name was Illidan.
There it is.
Illidan, then. He was part of Azshara's...
Again, golden eyes. Look at the golden eyes. It's I guess golden eyes in general for Elven society was considered like a destiny, foreshadow. Like, oh, if you're born with golden eyes, it foreshadows you having a great destiny. So Azshara and Illidan are the two that we know of that have been born with golden eyes.
Inner circle, but he used his position to help out the resistance. And because he was key to the resistance's victory, he was allowed to walk free. But there were some rules. And these rules were pretty important.
Interestingly enough, now you can make elves with golden eyes in the game. Well, there's that.
They were no magic and absolutely no elf wells. After all they'd been through, it was obvious that those things were just too dangerous. But, of course, Illidan didn't really listen. You see, before the Well of Eternity's destruction, he took 7 vials of its water. Now, you got to remember these vials, because they're going to become real important for the rest of the video. Now, without the Well of Eternity, the elves actually lost their immortality, and these vials were basically the last remnants of the World Soul's power that existed on the surface of the planet. So, what did Illidan do? Well, he poured 3 at the peak of Mount Hyjal, and when he did that, he created a new well, one that you can actually go and visit in game. This was obviously completely forbidden, given all the elves had just went through, so Illidan was tossed into prison with a life sentence, which, for an elf, is, quite a lot of time.
Imprisoned for 10,000 years. Yeah, it's a bit of a long time. Oh, what's up, R? So Thalkeel was listed as the first warlock of the Eredar. The Eredar, aren't they the Draenei, the ancient Draenei? So, like, they were obviously dabbling with the Legion and all that shit, It looks like Sargeras was playing multiple cards at the same time. He was whispering to the elves through Azshara, whispering through the Eredar, into Draenor and all that shit. Obviously talking to Gul'dan, like, all this shit. Oh, God, why am I forgetting his name? Opens up the Dark Portal, Mage. He was, fucking Crow. His little crow staff and shit. Why can't I remember his name? Damn it, he's like one of the most epic mages ever in the game. Somebody in chat tell me now. I'm going to lose my shit. Karazhan. Medivh, yes, there we go. Yeah, he was whispering to Medivh, corrupting him as well. So he was playing out with multiple chips on the board at all times. Maybe he was corrupting everybody at the same time, or he was just saying, hey, one of these got to work out for me in the end.
But it's not like Illidan could unpour the vials of water and undo the well that he had made. And much later on, Nosdormu, one of the dragon aspects, later blesses the world tree that is planted over Illidan's well, and that's what creates Nordrassil. And basically, as long as the elves remained around Mount Hyjal, they would preserve their immortality.
Right.
But let's get back to the vials. So 3 of them are gone, And we know that Illidan later gave Kel'Thas and Lady Vash one each. We actually find those in the Burning Crusade. But if you've been keeping count, you'll know that there's vials missing. One of them is actually totally missing from history. But the other one, we know what happened with it. It was taken by Dathramar's Sunstrider, that guy we talked about earlier. You see, he was also breaking the new rules placed on Elven society. Because as much as he wasn't a fan of Azshara and demons and Sargeras and all those bad things, he really did quite like magic. And during this part of the story, he is just portrayed as an arrogant asshole. He basically ridicules the druids for their ban in magic, and he just goes and practices magic in secret. Now, this went on for a couple of thousand years, but rather predictably, it all did go kind of wrong. When it went wrong, a magical storm erupted over Ashenvale, causing much destruction. This was not great. Now, the Night Elves look...
The pursuit of power. It's just as typical. It's a trope of World of Warcraft. Failure due to the pursuit of power.
Looking at this, kind of thought, right, we've got a lot of these highborn, and they're causing problems. But we can't just execute all of them, and we can't go and imprison all of them.
So
just
banish
wouldn't be
them.
Feasible. Well, they also knew they could not ignore them. So what they did is they banished the highborn. They banished them from Kalimdor. Now,
that's right.
A little bit of geography for you. Whenever I was talking about the Well of Eternity, basically all the stuff you see in the Warcraft map was one big continent called Kalimdor. But then, whenever we got rid of Sargeras and all that stuff at the Well of Eternity, whenever that happened, the well blew up. That event is called the Sundering, and that broke up all the continents into what you see today.
Correct.
So for the Highborn, it wasn't just a case of taking a boat to that place over there. They actually didn't know what lay beyond the new ocean. But still, they were banished, so they constructed massive ships, and they sailed toward their new home. Of course, with...
Where did they settle? Top of the Eastern Kingdoms, that's right.
A vial of eternity in Dathramar's back pocket. And that is how the High Elves happen. The exiled Highborn landed on what we now call the Eastern Kingdoms. Now, to get there, they followed the energy of Azeroth's ley lines. And these lines led them to a certain set of glades named after the keeper Tyr. You'll know them as the Tirisfal Glades. So that's where they landed. But there was a darkness beneath the earth there, a buried servant of the old gods, one that we, of course, meet at the start of the Legion expansion. But of course, they didn't really know a lot of that. All that they found was lots of elves going mad because of the darkness beneath where they had landed. So they quickly abandoned Tirisfal and they moved east. As along the way, they began to grow old. They began to get sick. They began to die.
Oh no.
And this wasn't really great news if you were an elf. It also isn't what they were used to. Because for the longest time, the Well of Eternity...
They were crackheads, losing their crack, going through withdrawals. And part of their withdrawals was losing their immortality.
...them alive forever. And when the well was gone, shortly after, Nordrassil was a thing. And that kept them going. But here, in a new land, a new continent, they had none of that. So they actually began to get smaller. They began to be shorter. And their skin even changed color. It lost the purple shade that we recognize in the Night Elves. But still, they had to forge on, so they did. They kept on traveling, and they were seeking a ley line power that was far, far to the north. There's a problem, though. That brought them straight into Amani Troll territory.
Enter Amani Trolls, and this is why I knew the second that they said this expansion is going to be very much elf-based. You guys remember, if you listen to Samiccus, you would have already known everything before Midnight was even announced. I said, Silvermoon is a hub city, boys. Bookmark it. That shit's happening. Long before Silvermoon was even announced to be relevant, the only thing we had seen was data mine stuff about Silvermoon being completely redone. And then Blizzard said they're going to rebuild Silvermoon, and I was like, guys, that's going to be the hub city. We're getting elf shit. This is what's going to happen in the next expansion. And then my follow-up to that was Silvermoon's going to be rebuilt. We're going to have elf shit going on, which means enter Amani Trolls. Now, I did say Amani Trolls will be playable. I mean, I don't know if that's still going to happen or not. I said we're going to see probably a new Amani Troll model. I even mentioned that we're going to get a new Erator model long before we ever did. It's just, you watch this stream and you learn things. Amazing, right? You're in class with Samiccus. But this Amani Troll stuff, I knew it because the Amani Troll Wars, the Troll Wars, all that shit that happened was very much tied to Elven history, and we're going to get to kind of, I'm sure, relive a lot of this stuff. It's going to be pretty cool. I'm excited for the Amani Zone.
Blood feud that basically exists to this day. Now, eventually on their journey, they actually found the ley line, but that wasn't enough for them. Because to ensure their immortality, Dathomir would have to get another well in the go. So he poured his vial of eternity into a lake, thus creating the Sunwell. It transformed the harsh, cold north into a beautiful, eternal spring, and using the Sunwell's power, the highborn shielded their use of magic from the Legion's eyes. And with that established, they were left free to live in a kingdom where they would learn basically no lessons from their failures. And they really did learn no lessons. We'll get.
Arrogance is a common theme of the Blood Elves, aka previously the High Elves, for sure.
To that quite soon. These are the highborn who helped Azshara bring the Legion to Azeroth, and they did repent at the last second, and they were spared because of that. But they refused to lose their immortality, and they ceded the well in Mount Hyjal. They were banished for refusing to quit their addiction to the arcane. They refused to give up their immortality, and ceded the Sunwell, a connection to Azeroth's energy, just like all the other ones that had caused so many problems for the elves historically. Basically, the highborn could never just give up, no matter what the cost was. Now, with that in mind,
hey guys, when did we get the Silver Moon, what's it called, announcement? I just want to know, because you guys are talking shit and chat about how I didn't say this. Look at this. I got a video that's freaking 1 year old, talking about all elves going cross-faction after Silver Moon revamp. Yeah, surprise. Silver Moon revamp, expected Silver Moon and the entire northern eastern kingdoms. That's 1 year ago. What else? I talked so much about Silver Moon being a hub city and stuff. It's huge. Respect the Lord. Yep. I mean, I've been talking about it 3 years ago. Updated Silver Moon revamp hits. Jesus, that's an old video. Yeah, your boy was talking about this for a long time. Long time. You just got to open your ears and your hearts to Samiccus, and he will lead you to the promised land.
Show you why the Sunwell has been a liability ever since. Alright, so the Sunwell is established, 7,000 years go by, and the Highborn, still known as Kaldori, are what we would now call High Elves. And these High Elves forge alliances with the humans, and they fight the Amani Trolls. Dathomir's great-grandson, Anastarion, is king. But he's not king for long, because he does end up dying, and his death very much marks the end of the High Elves, as they had existed for so long. The first sign of trouble was the Orcs, as the Orcs had, done the whole Dark Portal thing. So they marched on the borders of Quel'Thalas and, led by Amani scouts, found the source of the Elves' big magical shield, a series of runestones that were connected to the Sunwell. Then, Gul'dan, top Horde warlock, figured out that he could force his own energy back through the runestones and capture the Sunwell. A good plan, but he never got the chance because other stuff happened that's not really part of today's video. But a little bit after that, there's the big story you probably know of, Arthas. He needed a power source to resurrect Kel'Thuzad into a lich, which seems like a trivial...
More like Kel'Thuzad into a bitch, because of how many times we killed his ass so far. But anyway, I mean, Kel'Thuzad, we literally chased him after death and killed him again. That's how many times we fucked up Kel'Thuzad. But that's besides the point. When you think about the Sunwell and everything that's happened around it, Arthas was the only one to actually be able to get to it, to penetrate the defenses of the elves and actually get to the Sunwell and do what he wanted with it. Will Midnight be the second time it happened? Is Arthas a better villain than Xal'atath? I think that's confirmed right here. If Xal'atath fails to get to the Sunwell, then Arthas gets the ultimate W.
Use of the Sunwell's power, it did work. But to make it work, he needed to get there. And to get there, he just killed everything in his way, wiping out 90% of Quel'Thalas's population, and in corrupting the Sunwell, well, he cut the High Elves off from their magic, which was quite bad for them. So by now it's fair to say the High Elves had a pretty rough time. But now you're going to see how a whole bunch of High Elves really, really mess things up. So into this situation steps Anastarion's son, Kel'Thas Sunstrider. You probably know him, he's one of the big characters from the earlier days of Warcraft. He renames his people to Blood Elves, on account of all the blood that was spilled. And these Blood Elves then team up with Kael's great-great-grandfather's, it's Dathramar's, highborn friend, Illidan Stormrage. Because remember, Illidan is also a highborn. Now, Illidan is working with another group of highborn, the Naga. Because, yeah, remember, the Naga were highborn that basically, deep in the ocean, were literally drowning, and then got offered a deal they couldn't...
He basically assembled the greatest hits of elves who have dabbled too far into magic, or too far into powers they shouldn't have. Yeah, so he found the craziest elves around, and he was like, guys, let's get the band together. Let's figure out what we can. If we put all of our crazy heads together, we might be able to do some crazy shit.
Fused by an old god.
And crazy shit
so
they
when you
did
think
do.
about the later stories that go on in Outland, it's basically all highborn shenanigans. Now, whilst there, Kel'Thas falls to Legion Whispers and becomes corrupted by the Fel. And that's when he returned to the Sunwell.
Right.
And in a repeat of the War of the Ancients, tried to use the Sunwell to summon Kil'jaeden, one of the Legion's sort of big lieutenant head honchos, to Azeroth. Which, was a terrible idea that thankfully failed. Now,
failed thanks to the player characters who pushed him back through the Sunwell.
So marks the beginning of the Burning Crusade for Azeroth. Basically, the very moment that the Legion invasion became absolutely inevitable. And that's Legion invasion that we eventually fend off in the Legion expansion.
Right.
It's good news for everyone, but it doesn't mean the Sunwell is safe, because now it's time for the Sunwell's greatest threat to rise, and that threat is the Void.
It's
During
always
the final
the
patch of the Burning Crusade, we, along with the Shattered Sun offensive, marched on the Isle of Quel'Danas and we saved the Sunwell. Now, a raid in the Midnight expansion is named the March on Quel'Danas. It's the final raid of the first tier of that expansion. And
that's the mythic mount. That is a Ashes of Alar child. A child of the Ashes of Alar. That great mount that everyone loves with the ribbons flying off the wings. This is born of one of her eggs. And it's been void corrupted a little bit.
That means that once again,
it's the mythic boss, mythic mount for the raid.
Sunwell. So, listen closely to what happened next. The Sunwell was saved from Kel'Thas's madness at the end of the Burning Crusade, and that allowed the prophet Velen of the Draenei to bless it with the light. And that made the Sunwell a font of arcane energy from Azeroth, but also of the light from Velen and the core of Naru. But that's actually where everything started to go wrong, because elf wells are just too powerful, and the Highborn clearly were not responsible enough to have one. Into our story enters a long-lost daughter of Silvermoon, Illyria Windrunner. But whenever she returns, she's kind of infected by the Void. All that stuff that we did.
I mean, when you think about it, Illyria's just doing what elves always do, right? She sees a problem. She sees an uncontrollable power and says, actually, no, it's not. I'll control it. Y'all be the first one. You probably won't be, but I'm going to do it anyways. And she dives straight in, dick first, into void power without really thinking about how, it could damage her or end up badly. Now she's just like, I need more power to defeat this enemy. Where can I find it? Oh, yeah, that void thing might work out. And she's now a void elf, basically.
Long-lost daughter of Silver. But whenever she returns, she's kind of infected by the Void. All that stuff that we did in the final patch of the Legion expansion. And while she is in the Sunwell chamber, the Void starts to react, and it actually erupts from her.
Right.
And tries to claim the Sunwell. This was obviously quite bad, and it very much foreshadows what we're about to experience in the game with Xal'atath's attack in the Sunwell.
Yeah.
Because the Sunwell is now a font of the light. Because of that, it's now ready to be corrupted by the light's opposite, which is the Void. Just take a look at Beledar in the Hallowfall zone. Look at how it changes from light to void.
But we still don't know. Do we know why this is happening still? I thought we were going to explore this more, and we were going to really dive in. There was even rumors of a raid inside of this thing. If you guys remember the image, the early sketch from Blizzard Artists, where there was a stairway leading up into the crystal. I guess that's all canceled content now, but shit. Is this thing actually a Naru? Was that confirmed? I remember that we talked about it a little bit. But, it keeps going back and forth between... It was supposed to be a very important storyline. I feel like we kind of just left it.
Expect the same thing to happen to the Sunwell. And at that point, we're once again going to have to defend the Sunwell. And once again, we'll have to stop someone turning it into some weird world-ending device. Once again, will have to defend highborn immortality. Which brings me to my last thought. Whenever
Right.
Dathomir seeded the Sunwell, he said it would one day surpass the power of its predecessor, the Well of Eternity. And he totally would say that. Dude was pretty arrogant. In Midnight, the Sunwell may surpass the power of the Well of Eternity, but I think it will do that by being a Void Well. I think it'll do that because Xal'atath will dump all the stuff she's collected in the Darkheart straight into the Sunwell, all while it is still connected to Azeroth. I don't really know what that's going to do because that bit of the story hasn't happened yet, but
Right.
the main thing for you to know in this video is, so much of the story of World of Warcraft, and Warcraft in general, is us cleaning up after highborn elf bullshit. So now that you know how those dots connect together,
Damn.
how about you watch this next? It is the entire story of Xal'atath, everything we know, from her origins right up to the start of Midnight.
Yeah, nice video. Overall, a lot of good background context in terms of where we're going in Midnight, where we've been so far with the Elves. It's going to be very important going forward. And we'll see how this all lays out. Obviously, protecting the Sunwell and everything's a big deal, but we're on the side of the light right now. Is the light the right way to be? Are they the good guys? Is the Void the bad guys? I think there's a lot of interplay here going on, and then at the center of it all is Azeroth's World Soul and what that means and in terms of which direction it's going to go. So, nice video here overall from Bellular.